I did a little research on virtues and values,
Mm-hmm.
so that I can kind of just re-familiarize myself.
I did too. Yeah, I think that would be a fascinating conversation.
Yeah, yeah. What you come up with, or
I think the way that I would word it is that values are the most important things to me that I embrace, but virtues are the most important things to me that I embody. So there's not too much of a degree of separation between, I can make a list of values and a list of virtues, and it's not going to look too far off in terms of how I depict what those two ideas are. But how they live out in my life and how they motivate me, how they give me direction and insight into who I am and how I live in the world. I think they're very, very two different things. And I think this is a fascinating conversation because rarely do you talk about, I mean, you always talk about personal values, you talk about business values, and companies have them listed and all of that. But where do we ever hear the concept of companies and businesses having virtue?
yeah, yeah. I would think because it would be harder to put your finger on a virtue,
Yeah.
right? Because, like you said, this is something that you embody, opposed to a value, which is something that you embrace. You could quite possibly be forced to embrace it.
Yeah, you don't have a choice because society says you have to value these things.
Exactly. So then in that, is it a value? Because value is intrinsic.
I think it can still be a value. I don't think it's a virtue.
True.
You know what I'm saying? I mean, I know what you're saying because I agree with that too. Is it really a value if you don't value it? But just because I place a value on something doesn't mean that I'm willing to pay the price to buy it. So, I look at values almost like, you go into a store and they're putting the price tag on something.
Yeah.
Like when I value something, I'm placing a worth on that to prove to myself and to others that this is what that particular thing is worth to me. But am I willing to pay the price of my time, my talent, and treasure to bring that in and embody that? So I would say that values are those things that I see worth in, but virtues are the things that I actually live out, and I paid the price for that to become a part of who I am.
Yeah.
Which is different than who I aspire to be. I might want to be something of a value, but if I don't pay the price to be that, then it's not a virtue.
Yeah, and two words keep coming to mind with this. In terms of virtue, the word that comes to mind in terms of virtue, and you said embodiment already, and I think it also reflects embodiment, and that's experience.
Mm-hmm.
Virtue is an experience opposed to values, which are beliefs.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So you believe that you value that. Because that guy that's putting the pricing stickers on those products, the market determined what that price would be.
He was
right?
told what, yeah.
I may not believe that it's that valuable to me, but if 10 other people believe that it's valuable to them, that intrinsic value, then it is. I think the challenge for salespeople,
Yeah.
is first finding value in it themselves, finding value in the product that they're selling themselves, right? And everybody's a salesperson. The CEO of his company has to intrinsically have value in that company for himself and for the people that work there, right? So they're valuable.
Sure.
Within the company will embody virtues, discipline, kindness, creativity, trust, gratitude, service to one another.
Sure.
Right. So it's the virtues that, you know, when we hang our hats on the virtues, that seems to be the what is it called, the proof in the pudding.
Yeah. It's like you were saying, it's hard to put your finger on the virtue piece. I think it would be the same way that if I have a set of values, taking it back to an organization or a business, you know, they have a list of 5. Some of them have a list of 15 values, which is crazy.
Yeah.
It's really not about what the company says I value. It's about, I think, how to know whether it's a value or virtue isn't what I say I believe that's only, but it's how my customers and employees see me behave. So
Yeah.
I could say we value trust around, we have a culture of trust.
Yeah.
And as a leader, I might assume that everybody trusts me and I trust them. But if I don't, I might say that, but if my employees and customers don't sense that, it doesn't matter if I say there's a culture of trust all day long. If no one else recognizes that and senses that and lives in that reality, then it's not only is it not a value, it never becomes a virtue because it's not lived out.
Yeah. And it's not a value because no one has an intrinsic worth to it.
Yeah.
Right. Which is hard because in order to get trust, you actually have to give it first. And
right.
I think that's the hardest thing for most people. But that's the only way, because you can't require it if you don't know what it is, if you don't have an intrinsic value.
Right.
To say it's valuable, you know. Yeah.
It's what you said about experience, right? It's like, it's taking it from belief to behavior. And what I believe takes it from belief to behavior is really, really having a deep conviction about something that goes beyond an opinion. So those are the 2 things that come into mind when I think about it. Not only do I have an opinion about the value of something, but I have a conviction about it.
Yeah.
When it becomes a conviction and not just an opinion. See, it's what you were talking about. If 10 people say it's worth this, then when I sit down to write down my values, I might just by the very nature organically say, well, I value trust, or I value, you know, whatever it is, friendship, I value solitude, whatever it is that others are saying, this is something that you should value.
Right.
It's easier just to, by the nature of just knowing what everybody else says. And so it becomes this idea of, rather than belonging, I just want to fit in. So by fitting in, I just listen to what everybody else says. This is what is worth to be valued. And so then I just put that down and say, this is what my value is.
Yeah.
It's an opinion. It's not a conviction. I'm not convicted by that thing. It doesn't drive me. It doesn't motivate me. It doesn't move me. When I'm going through the high times and low times of life, it doesn't have the type of influence on me as a conviction would. If it's just an opinion, you can talk me out of it.
Yeah.
But when it's a conviction, you gotta drag me through the mud, through the fire. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And on the other end of it, nothing changed. It's because it's a conviction.
Yeah.
And that's what I think. Being able to ask, when I look over my list of values, do I have an opinion about these, or is it a true conviction inside of my soul? You know?
Yes. Yeah. I read a statement that said, your values do not decrease with others' inability to see them. Right. So once again, like you say, this value is intrinsic. And although 10 other people may view a product or service as valuable, it doesn't make it valuable to everyone, because not everyone is having an intrinsic or shows an intrinsic usefulness.
Sure.
Usefulness. And I think usefulness is a key word as well for it. So, right. So
Yeah. So the question would be then, as I'm starting to, for somebody that's listening, even if it's a business owner, personally and professionally for their business. So one of the questions might be, how am I most useful?
yes,
Right?
yes,
That's interesting.
yes,
Because I don't think that's a question a lot of us ask. A lot of us ask questions like, what makes me feel most alive?
yeah.
What do I care about most? What's the most important thing to me? And maybe usefulness is a value.
And well, and it most certainly points you to purpose,
Sure.
right? Because if you find your usefulness,
Yeah,
you
sure.
it automatically is an extension of your purpose, right? And that's where the virtues that you embody has an opportunity to express themselves because you found something of value to express your virtues or what you have embodied through experience.
Mm-hmm.
So what is valuable to one man is not valuable or may not be valuable to another.
Sure.
The value is definitely intrinsic, and it's the salesman's job to find or to empathize. And I only once again when I say salesman, I mean doctors and lawyers, right?
We're all salesmen, right?
We're all salesmen, right? Because we're communicators and we're connected to one another, and we're selling ideas, hopefully to help one another vibrate higher.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
Yeah. So virtues, man. We build and I remember that quote on the back of the wall that I have in terms of virtue, and that's that truth is built with the foundation of truth. I build my mansions with bricks of virtue and the mortar of love, right? So the bricks of virtue is patience.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Even when you're raising your children, can you imagine how much patience you need, right? Discipline, creativity, trust, gratitude, all the things that we need to raise a child that will have intrinsic values,
Mm.
right? We need to display through our experiences with that. You know those inspirational pictures you see this big the Grand Canyon.
It's like
And
an eagle flying over a mountain.
yeah, and it says something like perseverance.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is a virtue, right? Because we can look out into nature and we can see virtues. We can see that in order to create a Grand Canyon, it takes patience and perseverance for that water to trickle through year after hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years.
Yeah.
That magnificent things, right? That we now see have an intrinsic value to us require virtues to create, even in nature. And not only, so no, not only in nature, even in nature, not only in nature and in man.
And we are nature.
And we are nature.
And we are the Grand Canyon, right? I mean,
absolutely.
So let's talk about that for a moment, because what I'm getting from what you're saying is, in order for values, which we could consider that almost flat ground, to become a canyon, to be photographed.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It takes patience.
Say patient.
It's value to virtue. In between a value and virtue is patience. Like
Mm-hmm.
it might take a decade before a value becomes a virtue in somebody's life.
Yeah, because it takes
about character.
Yep.
Yeah, I thought about that. I thought, if I look at you, Chris, and I hang out with you a little bit, all I know is your reputation.
Mm-hmm.
And I can know what you value based on your reputation.
Sure.
But I don't know your virtues until I know your character.
Yep.
And even that, for me, takes patience to know your virtue. Imagine how long it takes for you to develop the virtue.
Absolutely.
I think patience is really a crucial component of this. And that's maybe why a lot of companies, I keep going back to that idea, is a lot of companies just have values and not virtues, because they're trying to get a list of things on a wall as quickly as they can and make it sound as sexy as they can. But to have virtues within a business, it takes years of dedication.
Absolutely.
It's like, what's the character of your business, right? It's the same as a person. Like, what is your character? How have you been forged in the fire? How have you been formed by the years of the trickling of water in your life? Like, how has life and life experience created the avenues by which like life flows from you?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So that now, decades later, and I think sometimes maybe we don't fully know what our virtue really is until decades later, right? Like we want to assume this is what my virtue is, this is what my character is. But, I think it really, really does take a lot of patience and growth. And that's why it's beautiful when you sit down with someone in their 80s or 90s,
Yep.
sit down with them and you listen to their experience and their stories. There's something to the value of their story and their conversation and their journey that's far more. I love young people, believe me. I'd far rather sit down with someone in their 80s and someone in their 20s and talk about life.
For sure, because that's the difference between the flat land of values and the Grand Canyon. It's the time in between.
That deep stuff, man.
It's the experience that you have the opportunity to, through certain experiences, express that virtue or not express the virtue. And at least that gives you an indication of what it is you need to work toward in terms of your purpose.
Sure. That deep stuff, man.
Yeah.
It's what you've gone through that now you can contribute.
Absolutely.
When I think about virtue too, I think about what is it that I can contribute from who I am. Because if it's just a value, all I can contribute is my words.
Mm-hmm.
This is what I value. But when it's virtue, I can contribute my experience. I can contribute life lessons. I can contribute character.
Compassion.
Yeah, compassion. You know what that word compassion, it means that I have come past that myself. That's why people that have compassion for others have it, because they've come past it themselves. That's that life experience, man.
Yeah.
You meet someone that doesn't have compassion for someone, is because they can't empathize. They don't get it because they ain't been through nothing. I want friends and road dogs that have been through some shit, man.
Yeah, for
sure.
What I'm saying? Yeah, and help us through this journey, help us understand and make sense of what's happening, because you can look outside in the world sometimes and nothing seems to make sense.
Right.
And that depends on the lenses that you're looking at it with.
How important is it then, as we have life experience, to share those, right? Like, man, young people need to hear that sometimes life doesn't make sense. Yeah. Sometimes marriage is really, really tough. Sometimes relationships fall apart. Sometimes the people that you thought would be there for you till the end are the very ones that turn their back on you. When we tell those stories, and we create, it's not to paint a picture that life is always bad, but it's also to recognize there's realities to life and life experience that's so helpful when we're open and honest about our own life experience and what patience has taught us, and what those virtues, where those virtues came from. You think about going out into the ocean, and you're looking up in the front of the boat, and there's a captain up there that ain't never been out on a boat before, and your life is in their hands. I want a captain who's been through some storms, man, who knows how to navigate a boat when the waves were 20 or 30 feet high and we're crashing against a boat, and the sails were ripped apart. And I want a captain that's been through something.
Yeah, you don't want the one that's running around trying to find out what happened.
I don't want to look up front and the captain looks more scared than I do, man.
Right, right. Man, and that's the thing, Ryan. That is the hero's journey. That's the hero's journey. To go through the fire, not only to go through the fire, make it out the other end of the fire, but live to tell the tale, to teach the tale. Now you become the hero. So you faced you found your purpose through your values and your virtues, right? And now you go on that path to create your Grand Canyon.
Yeah.
And after that Grand Canyon is created, it's there for all to observe what true patience and perseverance and commitment is in and of itself. And that's what we need to go out here and do, man, and just be representatives of our authentic selves. But we have to have, like we talked about in the empathy video, the intestinal fortitude to express that, because it's not always easily accepted, right? Because with that, you have a lot of accountability and responsibility. First and foremost, that of your reality. Now you have no more scapegoat. No, there's no one else to blame, right? You're the hero. You're the answer to the question.
Right. It's powerful stuff, man. I mean, I think like, you know, I'm always seeing things in a process, right? So when I'm listening to you, I'm seeing the word patience.
Yeah.
So I'm also seeing it go even further than that to perseverance.
Yeah.
Which sounds similar in terms of what it takes, because perseverance takes patience.
Yes. And
You can be patient without fully persevering, because people will be patient up to a point, but when all hell breaks loose, that's when perseverance kicks in.
Yeah. And this is the thing. Waiting alone is not patience. It's how you wait that is patience. Right? So while you're patiently waiting, you're actually persevering through the energies that are telling you you need to do something.
Right.
You know, so I think they're really interlinked there, which is why virtues are so important. And that's why we have to build. That's why I say I use the bricks of virtue, because every brick in the building that you're building, right, is going to take love to be martyred, because love brings it together and has it stick, right? So it's going to have your perseverance and your patience stick together. So that's the bricks of your building, of your true mansion, right? Because the true mansion that you're building is you.
I think of everything in threes, and because I used to be a pastor, I think of it all starting with the same letter. You know what I'm saying? And I hear that patience, perseverance, and power. Because when I hear the word love, every time I hear the word love, I think that is our greatest power, man. I think when you talk about what brings it all together, the power that we have after we've experienced everything that we could experience in life, and our values become virtues, and it's deeply ingrained inside of us, it becomes the language of our soul. It becomes who we are intrinsically. It's the very essence of what makes us who we are. I think that the power of love is what shifts what we've been through and what we feel we have a right to after we've been through it. It shifts the focus off of us onto others. And that's really the call of life, right? Is to take everything that we've learned and everything that we've led and create a legacy out of that allows others to elevate. It allows others to experience what it means to go from values to virtues, and what it means for their soul to come alive as well, and to really live out who their most authentic self is, what you were talking about. Like that, man, that takes a lot of self-work, man.
Yeah, but the fact of the matter is, with, like you say, love is the bonding force of the universe. So without it, we all just fall away.
Fall apart and fall away.
Fall apart and fall away. And that's what brings so much distance between us, right? As humans, you know, as partners in relationships, right? So once we notice and we experience that distance, look to the Grand Canyon for answers. Oh, patience. Oh, perseverance. Oh, compassion, power. Yes, 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 yes,
Well,
yes.
everybody, that's what, in business, everybody's talking about how do we engage employees? How do we engage customers? Love them.
Yes, but that's,
Love is what brings us together.
yes.
If love is what binds us, if love is what creates the connected tissue, in a sense, between you and I, between me and anyone else,
Mhm.
I think about that all the time. I mean, love is the very thing that when we get to a place where it's more than just a value and it's a virtue, every one of those values are going to be lived out through the lens and the power of love.
Mhm.
That's, I think, how I know that it's a true virtue, is that love is the motivating factor. It's a motivating drive between every single one of those values. It's not as if I just have these values because it benefits me. Because if I have this value, I know, Chris, your life is elevated. Your life is enhanced.
Yes.
Right? Like something better happens for you because I value this, and it becomes a virtue in me, and the power of love motivates me because I know that in some way, someone else, whether it's you or someone else, the benefit isn't for Ryan.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Like the benefit is for someone else. Like it creates opportunity. It opens up a door. It goes back to the conversation of empathy. It makes me more present for others. I should go up more,
You said, no, spot on, Ryan. You said, one thing you said was that we have to love our customers, right? So what do we have to do before we love our customers?
Love ourselves.
Yeah, love ourselves, man. And we have to teach people how to love themselves. We have to show and guide people to the information that allows them to understand who they are.
Sure.
Right? And we can only do that, one, we mentioned it earlier, and that's going through the hero's journey. You have to have experienced it first in order to have empathy, right? And in order to have empathy, and when you have empathy, you'll share that story as an experience and as an example of the Grand Canyon you are.
Yeah, yeah. Well, think about this too, what you were talking about with if we're gonna love our customer, we have to teach people how to love themselves. Employees aren't going to love customers when employees don't feel loved.
Exactly. Yes.
Like how in the world are customers going to trust our employees when our employees don't trust us? You know what I'm saying? Like,
well, when our employees don't trust themselves.
To trust themselves.
Right. Because even it doesn't matter whether or not they can trust us yet, because they don't understand trust.
Sure.
You will only understand trust through understanding the trust that and the compassion and all the other things that you have for self, because that's an experience. Once you experience it, once again, that's the hero's journey, right? Now you can come out on the other end and be an example of that and an expression of those values and those virtues. But they're young, right? The leadership has to take responsibility in the understanding, right, that this is what's needed. And then with that, take accountability and put the apparatuses in place to ensure the influence of these values, right? Because that's all you can do. You can only influence with your values.
Right.
And through wisdom will the tale tell itself in terms of, okay, this value create a virtue.
Turn from a belief to a behavior.
Yeah.
When it's truly lived out. Yeah. So as we end today,
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to ask you a question, and I want you to ask me the same question.
All right.
Right. Chris, tell me of what you know about me, what is one of my virtues?
Ooh. All right. So, of what I know about you,
Yes,
what
just one.
is one of your virtues? All right. I had to write that down.
And I have that. Listen, I didn't plan on this, so I'm not just throwing it on you. I'm throwing it on myself too, because I haven't. I mean, it just popped into my head, so I wanted to just end with like a personal note, and yeah, and you can ask me the same thing, and we can take some time to think it through a little bit.
Because I see, you know, because I've been knowing you for a few years now, so I've had the opportunity to see a few virtues. It's just which one do I want to choose? Because I think one virtue that I'm going to choose, it's because I see it in myself, and that's compassion, right? You have compassion for others, and that's why you do what you do. Right? No one, you know, no one hops on a bus and travels the country, promoting a culture of good within the organization for the sake of good alone.
Yeah.
That's a virtue, compassion. And that's one. That's one virtue. I'll just leave it there. Compassion, for sure.
Thank you. So ask me.
So of what you know of me, what would you say would be one, just one now, of my virtues?
I had another one, but that was an easy way.
Okay.
And it starts with an E, and you know what it is. We've talked about that.
Yep.
But as I've kind of marinated in just as you were talking, just in my own thoughts, the word that comes to mind is understanding. There's something about you in the time that we spend together, and I see you spending with others, that when people talk to you, when there's a conversation happening, you're not just listening to respond, you're listening to understand. And I think that does come from empathy, but I think the idea of understanding in your, I was going to say value, but definitely a virtue of taking time with people and being willing to go out of the way for others, or out of your own way for others, really.
Sure.
And to gain not only knowledge and intelligence, which I think you have, without a doubt. People listen to you. But I think what you have that goes beyond even wisdom is understanding. And I think that matters, because I can go talk to someone who's wise, but they don't understand.
Yeah. I feel you. I feel you on that.
And so, yeah, understanding is definitely the thing for me that I see in you.
I appreciate that. Because that's what I seek. I seek understanding in all things, right? Wise man once said, "Powerful weapon you can possess is an accurate assessment of the situation. And if I don't understand, I don't know."
Yeah.
So thank you for that. I appreciate that. Right.
Yeah. So I guess we end the convo with that, huh?
Yeah, that'll work, man.
And the takeaways, what? Patience. If we're gonna go from values to virtue, patience,
perseverance, and power. Right? Yeah. Let's leave it there. Patience, perseverance, and power.
Good, man. And what is the power?
Love.
Love.
The bonding force of the universe.
Love you. Love you, Chris.
I love you, right?
I appreciate you a lot, man.
Yes,
Thanks for, in spite of how hard it is sometimes, thanks for taking time to understand me, homie.
Sure. All right, Roger out.
Yep, I'm out.
All right.